Are you ready?
Let's go.
Now circling in the neutral zone.
Here's the pitch on the way. 36 yards for the win.
This.
Here comes a big chance. The shot.
Is
this the dagger?
The neutral zone.
Home run. Good.
This is as good as it gets.
Now, here's your host, two-time Paralympian, Brock Richardson.
What's going on? It's time for another edition of The Neutral Zone. I am indeed your host, Brock Richardson. Coming up on today's show, we are going to hear a conversation that Cameron and I did a little while ago with Canadian Wheelchair Rugby, a former athlete turned coach, Trevor Hirschfield, and it was a great conversation. Plus, we're going to chat a little bit about their results in the recent event that they did in Australia, and the Stanley Cup Final is upon us, and it's a rematch between the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers. So we'll chat a little bit about that. I'm joined by Claire Buchanan and Cam Jenkins. Here comes your headlines.
Neutral Zone headlines.
The International Olympic and Paralympic Committees have confirmed that Russia will remain banned from the 2026 Olympic and Paralympic Games in Milan, Italy.
We would like to send congratulations to Team USA for winning the 2025 Para Ice Hockey World Championships. They were victorious 6-1 over Canada, and in the bronze medal game, we saw the Czechs defeat China 2-1. Congratulate everybody involved in that, and I believe that that's a bit of a different result in years past in the bronze medal game when you look at Czechs winning that bronze medal. So congratulations to that organization.
Moncton, New Brunswick has been named the next host of CBC's Hockey Day in Canada. Look out for more details on dates and specifics through the NHL and here at the Neutral Zone.
Wow, Claire, I didn't even put in the word day in your headline as I was reading it along with you. So well done, filling it in on the fly.
Hey, part of our job is to do a little bit of research, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, it works. I just thought I'd throw you into the fire your first week back in a little while. So, pass the test. Those are your headlines for this week. If you want to get a hold of us on social media and tell me what a bad producer I am, here's how you can do that.
And welcome back to the Neutral Zone broadcast booth.
Play ball.
We're set to get this bowl game underway. The first pitch is brought to you by Brock Richardson's X account at Neutral Zone BR. First pitch and a strike. Hey gang, why not strike up a chat with Claire Buchanan from the Neutral Zone? Find her on X at Neutral Zone CB. There's a swing of the chopper out to second base, right at Claire as she picks up the ball, throws it over to the first base for a routine play.
Out!
And fans, there's nothing routine about connecting with Cam and Josh from the Neutral Zone at Neutral Zone Cam J and at J Watson 200. Now that's a winning combination.
We are thrilled to be joined by Wheelchair Rugby Paralympic athlete and now head coach for Canada's Wheelchair Rugby program, Trevor Hirschfield. Trevor, nice to have you along with us today, and nice to be with you.
Oh, happy to be here.
So, as I understand, your last international event with Team Canada was at the Paris Paralympic Games. Can you walk us through the process and the decision-making behind being an athlete and now head coach just 2 short years later?
Yeah, so I wasn't planning to retire after Paris. When the coaching opportunity came up, I saw a program that needed someone to take the leadership, and there was a lot of athletes there that I had played with, and I thought that I was going to be able to provide some guidance and some drive for the program to help take them to the next step they needed to be successful internationally. So I jumped at the opportunity to apply for the head coach position and was lucky enough to get it.
Was there sort of a moment in your kind of, seeing the application, going through the stuff you just said, was there sort of a moment where you thought to yourself, okay, thinking all that through, now's the moment I'm going to actually submit my application and actually apply for this?
Yeah, there was a moment where saw the application, saw the posting, and I was like, it's time for me to take a next step in my journey. I'd been on the national team for almost 2 decades, and I put a lot of my life into being a national team athlete, and I was lucky enough to be a captain for many years. I saw a program that needed some guidance, and I didn't want it to be put in the wrong hands. After years of dedication as an athlete, I felt that I could provide something as a coach to help, drive the program. So I took that opportunity, and I wasn't willing to let it be put in someone else's hands, I guess. I wanted to take a shot at coaching and see what I could do for the program.
And being that you're just recently removed as an athlete, why do you believe that's going to be a benefit to you in your new coaching role?
I think just one being that I have an understanding of the current landscape of the game, having played recently. I have an understanding of the athletes in the program, having played with them and what their strengths are, and also internationally knowing the opponents well and knowing their athletes well helps me to make decisions and what our team needs to work on to be successful.
Something you said in my previous question to you, which I want to pick up on, you said I didn't want to leave the program in the wrong hands, so I wanted to apply for the position. So with that said, what do you bring to the program that in your mind nobody else does?
I think just my experience. I was fortunate to have a lot of success as an athlete, and knowing what it took to be successful as an athlete, to help the next generation of athletes with guidance on that, and taking the things that I worked on and the things I focused on to be successful, and be a leader as a coach to help the next generation of athletes and our athletes that we're developing, and kind of take that and push that onto them.
And what do you hope to learn about yourself in this role that you otherwise wouldn't have learned if you still played?
I obviously it's completely different coaching versus playing. And for me, it's just learning what it takes to be a successful coach, and to what I need to do in order to properly support the athletes and their growth. So for myself, it's just being open to learning that and what it takes to be a successful coach, and to surround myself with people who have been great coaches in Canada, and learning what I can from them, and obviously being willing to grow and take constructive criticism and really work on being the best coach I can for the program.
Canada has not won a Paralympic medal in wheelchair rugby since 2012. What do you believe the program needs to do to get themselves back on the podium?
I think we need to, one is really start developing our program, bring in, and we have a lot of great athletes within Canada. So I think it's, again, supporting their growth and what they need to be successful. I think our program needs to take ownership in the fact that we haven't won a Paralympic medal, and be okay to make the necessary changes, like the development, and kind of just be willing to put in that work to take that next step. As a coach, I'm I want to challenge the athletes with that, and with that growth is, there's going to be times where we're pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones, but we're okay with that. We're going to make mistakes, but we're going to learn from them, and we got to be okay to make those mistakes so that we can learn from them. I think it's about creating a positive environment for growth with the athletes and creating that safe space where we're here to learn, we're here to grow, and looking at what it takes to do that. So we're going to be in tough positions, but we're going to learn from those positions. We're going to be in games where we might not be successful at this point in time, but we're working towards being successful later on in the quad. So when it comes to Paralympics, and putting ourselves in the best position possible to be successful.
Now, since you were a player and then moving to the coaching side, that can be a hard transition. Even if you're a worker at work and then you get on the management side or supervisory side, how are you going to balance that, with players, like on who you choose? How are you going to handle that type of relationships now that you're on the coaching side?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously different. You have a lot of friends that you played with, and there's going to be points where you're going to have to make tough decisions, but I think it's about being transparent with the athletes around your decisions and why you made them. I think it's about giving everyone an opportunity to be successful, and giving everyone an opportunity to show that they belong in the program. So I think it's about creating an environment where you're giving the athletes every opportunity to be successful, and from there you're putting it in their hands to take that next step. And through conversations and transparency within your decisions, I think it makes it a lot easier to justify why you chose to go a certain direction. And as long as everyone understands how you're making your decisions, I think, it makes it easier to make those decisions when everyone understands why.
Was there a player, somebody who reached out to you that, really stands out to you where you think, I'm grateful X person reached out and congratulated me on your new position on the program?
I don't know if it's one player. I think there's been a lot of support from the athletes and from players that I played with that appreciate that I took the step to put my career, to end my athletic career and take a shot at the coaching side. There was a lot of players that I played with that were very supportive of me as an athlete, and those same players, have been supportive of me in changing to that coaching role. I think there's been a lot of just support through that from many of the players that I played with.
What's the schedule like for this year? Maybe even from picking some of your assistant coaches to the travel schedule, the training schedule. Can you walk us through some of that?
Yeah, of course. It's been kind of an off year in terms of the transition period with selecting the head coach, and in the end of the Paralympics, there was a big gap, but it's starting to ramp up a bit. We have qualifiers in July where we're going to Brazil to qualify for Worlds. Schedule's not as full as, a World year or a Paralympic year, but we're trying to fill that up. And the assistant coach is still something that I'm searching for. I want to find the right fit. I want to find somebody who can challenge me as a coach as well, and force me to look at things in a different light. And I think that'll offer something to me as a coach as well, to look at things differently. So I'm still kind of picky with that, and still trying to find the right match there. But the schedule, trying to fill up the later end of the year with some training opportunities, some competition opportunities, and hopefully again more into the next year leading into Worlds.
So can you give us an idea of what kind of team you would like to field, like day in and day out?
Right now, I think what we're looking for with the team is people who want to be there to challenge themselves, to be okay getting out of their comfort zone in order to improve as athletes. And I want to challenge them to work harder than they think they can. I guess like the big thing right now is we want to field a team that win or lose, we're not losing battles in terms of like our fitness or where we're at that way. We want to grind every team down, and whether we make mistakes or not, we're going to grow from those, and we're going to be supportive of each other in that growth. It's kind of all hands on deck with that. We have a lot of athletes who have a lot of experience, and we have a bunch of athletes who are really in the development stage of their careers, and we want to support everyone through their growth here. We want to challenge our athletes with experience to not be satisfied with that and continue to push themselves, and we want them to support the growth of the newer athletes, and through that, strengthen our bond as a team.
Is there something within this role that you are, the only word that's coming to my mind is nervous, but I feel like I could use a better word, but it's the only word that's coming to my mind. Is there something that you're nervous about where you'd say, this is the one thing that I would be nervous about taking on the role as head coach?
I don't know if it's nervous about. I think I'm aware that going into the coaching role, and there's a lot that I need to learn, and being willing to learn that and to put myself out there, and like I'm gonna make mistakes as well, but I want to learn from those. So I guess I don't want to come in and let people down in terms of leading the team. So I'm trying to do everything I can to better myself as a coach and to grow as a coach. So I don't know if it's nerves, but it's just being aware that I'm in a position where like when I first came into the program, I'm trying to learn everything I can as an athlete, and now transitioning into the coaching role, I'm trying to learn as much as I can from other coaches in other programs that were successful. So I'm just really aware that I need to continue to grow, and this is a new position for me. So I'm taking every opportunity I can to take as much information from successful people as possible.
And to end on a real positive note, is there something in light of all that you're like, I can't wait to start doing and I'm excited about?
Yeah, I mean, we go to Australia at the end of the month, which will be the first time coaching internationally and playing in a competition. So I'm super excited about that. Right now it's been training camps, and I haven't had the opportunity to coach in a game. So I'm looking forward to that and that first experience. And I think obviously there'll be ups and downs, but taking the positives from that, and then also taking, the setbacks and growing from those as a coach, and continuing to build on myself as a coach and in that different leadership role. I was a leader as an athlete, and although it will be different as a coach, I still want to be a leader to the program and the athletes.
Well, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for doing this interview. We greatly appreciate it, and I wish you the best of luck in this role, and I hope to have you and your athletes that you will eventually select on this program as we have down the line.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That is Trevor Hirschfield, who is now the head coach for Team Canada and Wheelchair Rugby. So before we get to chatting about the para ice hockey worlds and some other things that we might get to, we might not, you know how this works on this podcast by now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Wheelchair Rugby Canadian team who went to Australia for an event. You just heard an interview with Trevor Hirschfield, which Cameron and I had fun doing that. And this event was his first event as coach. And they unfortunately did not come home with hardware. They came home fourth place. They were not victorious against Brazil in the bronze medal game. If we look at this on the surface, because it was hard to kind of watch the team in the times that they played because of them being in Australia. If we look at this just simplistically on the surface, can you look at a fourth place finish as a success for this new coach with some new players? Or is it sort of the beginning of the same old as they haven't been on the podium in a long time at the Paralympic Games? Let's start with Claire on this one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if you look at the roster, I think it gives a little bit of perspective into the development that they're putting into the team. The roster is a lot different from that went to Paris. There's a couple athletes that wouldn't normally be on that roster, I believe. And they were missing their main player in Zach Medell. He was in back-to-back tournaments with both wheelchair rugby and wheelchair basketball at the national championships for wheelchair basketball. And then the following weekend, he was at nationals with wheelchair rugby. So I think this is a move that the coaching staff made to not only kind of give Zach the opportunity to go do these other tournaments and give space for other athletes to develop and get some international play under their belt. But I crossed paths with Zach at both of these tournaments, and I wish I would have asked him that question, because I mean, I am curious as to what his weight was in the decision of either not going or not being selected to go. But in my mind, he's regarded as the best player in the world in wheelchair rugby. So it's kind of like taking like Steph Curry off of Team USA. Like, you don't really want to do that unless you're trying to develop other players. So that's where I think the coaching staff is kind of focusing on right now. And we're very early in a Paralympic quad as well. So this is where you want to develop.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about it. There was 8 teams there, and they ended up, being fourth. And as Claire just talked about, some of their best players, or the best player in the world, wasn't there either. So I'm not too concerned about it. Be nice to know kind of like what the effort was from some of the newer players that they're trying to develop, to see how they did and how they're coming along. But personally, I'm not too worried about it at all.
Well, that makes trifecta. I look at this and I say, this looks to me like a team that was put together that is at the beginning of a quad. And I think that is what teams tend to do at the beginning of quads. You don't see necessarily, Steph Curry, playing for Team USA in year one of a quad. He's got bigger things to do in year one of a quad. But I think this is a decent move by Wheelchair Rugby Canada if everyone was on board. And I know Zach obviously had some other, plans and want to be part of the wheelchair basketball nationals. And, just being a part of one event is tough, let alone back to back. So I think this was probably by design, and it alerts me to kind of want to send Zach an email and say, hey, can you come on and sort of talk a little bit through this, and we'll see where we get to. Zach is a very honest human being, so I think we would get some good information there. So look for potentially Zach down the road, or maybe. Yeah.
I do have another thought on Zach, actually.
Go ahead.
He was competing at the wheelchair national championships.
Wheelchair basketball, yeah.
Wheelchair basketball. So does that mean that he's looking to go or is thinking about going to the Paralympics also for wheelchair basketball? I don't know if anyone can answer that question, but that's the only problem I would have. Is that if he's kind of doing two competitions, especially when the sport that he's doing with wheelchair rugby is so rough, it must be hard, and you get bruises and kind of your body kind of wrecked. And wheelchair basketball too is no easy game, and I'm sure with the kind of hits and falls that happen there too. So that would be the only one concern that I would have, is if he's trying to do for both. Being greedy, I would hope that he would concentrate on one and put his full effort into that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you can do two sports at the Paralympics either, and they would both be at the Summer Games. So, and I mean, Zach has a long history with Wheelchair Basketball Canada. He flowed in and out of the academy when it was there in Scarborough. So I think I think he just took the opportunity, in my opinion. I would love to have him on the show to get all this confirmed. But I think he was just taking a weekend to go over to another sport that he enjoyed. And I got to tell you, I was there for that gold medal game against Alberta and Ontario at the Wheelchair Basketball National Championships. And he's a big part of that team. So I think that he made a choice of, hey, I don't really need to be at this rugby tournament. We're early in the quad and going to go help my Alberta program out here at national championships.
Yeah. I mean, the luxury too, sometimes with para sports, I mean, we had it in our sport, is sometimes in some situations you can sort of get permission, and I'm using get permission on purpose, to compete with your provincial club if it's the right fit, if we can use the argument of quote unquote cross training. You know, there's a lot of reasons why you'd get this, and I respect the fact that he wanted to go and play for his provincial club, and that's fine, and as long as everybody's on the same page. But no, I think we're all on the same page. Although, Cameron, with me, spurring this on to everybody within the last 10 minutes since we started, I think your point is one that I kind of go, oh yeah, okay, that is kind of a concern, but I would have more of that concern, I think, if this was year 2 or 3 in the quad. I'd be like, how come you're missing from an event, but year 1, I'm not so worried at this point. But these are all questions that I am putting in the memory bank for when I email Zach, probably after this show, to be perfectly honest with you, and seeing if we can get him on in the not too distant future. Speaking of events in the para sports world, there was a world championship for para ice hockey, and Canada played in the round robin, and as expected, they rolled through the round robin. They were undefeated in the round robin, only surrendering 2 goals in that round robin, and they won their semifinal quite handily as well, and then thus they went on to play Team USA, and the result at the end was 6-1 for United States, as I said at the headlines. I want your general reaction to this, but I'll pose this question to you to start. Do we look at this year and this year's result as more of a blip in the radar, given that they won last year's World Championships, or do we look at it and say we're back in the same old, and last year was a one-off? Cameron, what say you on this?
Well, right now, I really hope that it wasn't a one-off last year, but based on a 6-1 6-1 slaughter, basically, like 6-1 is not a good score to have. I'm very concerned that last year was the blip. I saw kind of some of the same things again, where the States, they get it into the zone and their forechecking is really good and they're getting it out and breaking it out. And Canada isn't necessarily, able to break it out and get good opportunities. And that's what I saw from my perspective from this tournament.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's growing pains. We have a handful of athletes on this team that last year was their very first World Championships. I'm hoping it's growing pains, and that it just goes to show how important playing on home ice is as well. Like Canada won last year on home soil in Calgary, and here we are in Buffalo, New York, with a full crowd almost in that gold medal game wearing USA jerseys. So I think that plays a big part. But again, this Canadian team has a really balanced look of veterans and new athletes. And if you look at the comments from their head coach, Russ Harrington, it's the gap in talent is closing between the top 3-4 guys on the national team to the rookies. So there's new athletes coming in with a lot of effort being put into training and trying to push themselves. So I think it's just staying consistent in how they want to play their game. I think Canada can really, and they've shown it. They showed it last year at World Championships that if they play their game and they stay out of the box, I think that we can be the better 5-on-5 team. But you can't let any of those guys on the U.S. squad get a hat trick as well. So it's little things that obviously stack onto each other, but I seeing this roster and what they are doing and just how they're going about themselves as well. I've had the privilege of interviewing a handful of these guys and the coaching staff, and you can really guys are buying in at all levels. And yeah, the Paralympics are next March. So just over 6 to 8 months here. I think right at 8 months until the puck drops literally in Italy. So I think it's growing pains. And I think it's showing just within staying consistent in style of play.
I'm gonna pose this initial question to Claire, and then I want Cameron's thoughts on this. And I know what I'm about to say is gonna make people go, "Oh, you're going here," but let's just play this out hypothetically. So last year, we see the team win in Calgary in really, as you point out, a team style. Like everyone was diving in front of pucks, like they took advantage of their opportunities. They win the World Championship. And honestly, when they won the World Championship last year, I thought, oh, okay, Russ Harrington's job is probably saved. And it's probably still okay now based on the fact that we are less than a year out from the Paralympics. But if we had lost that World Championship last year, are we having the same conversation? Or do you think Russ is safe either way, depending on how the result did or didn't go last year and this year? Claire, your thoughts?
As of right now, I think it would have stayed the same either way. If we have this conversation after Italy and the result hasn't changed for us there, I think that's a different conversation. I, as a para-athlete, selfishly want to see a para-hockey player in that head coach position, not just for kind of experience and stuff, but just showing para-hockey players that there is a spot there, and you can be head coaches at that level and for that team. So I think it'd be an interesting move if it did happen. But I also think that Russ Harrington has a really good sense of culture that he's putting forward for the program. I would like to have this conversation again after Italy.
Oh, we will. Don't you worry. We'll have the conversation again. But hopefully we're talking about it as a gold medal victory and we're not having this exact conversation. Cameron, your thoughts on what I presented?
Yeah, like I think if they don't win in Italy, I think it's probably time for a change. It just... like, it's always the coach or the manager that'll get fired first, but you have to look at the players on the team, and you've got to get the right mix. I know they try hard. They're working out hard. They're trying hard. It's not a matter of they're not trying hard. It's just the American players are better, unfortunately. And, I've always talked, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned this because, I don't know if it's, ableism or whatever. But what I've found is that when you're an amputee, that you seem to be so much better at para ice hockey because besides, and this sounds cruel the way I'm about to say this, but if your leg is not there from the knee down, you have the rest of your body that's not disabled. And you've got all your muscle groups and everything. So I think those players are the ones that can do more compared to people that have spina bifida and other disabilities to play because they don't necessarily have all of their muscle groups or, in order to be able to maybe go as fast as some of those American players are. So to me, it makes a huge difference when there's a lot of amputees on one team compared to a team that may not have a lot of amputees. And maybe there are a lot more now on Team Canada, but that's just a thought I've always had, and maybe I've talked about it on the show before. I don't remember, but that's how I feel.
That's the proof is in the pudding. Like it kind of comes down to science. Like you weigh less, you have more space to handle the puck in front of you. It's just an easier game for them. Their edges are better. Yeah,
because they have more muscle groups to be able to do those edges and cleaner and quicker and tighter.
They definitely have an advantage. I agree with you.
So full disclosure, it's like Cameron was inside my brain.
That's a scary thought.
I know it is, but we've almost done this together 10 years, so it doesn't surprise me. But I'm going to tell you that I had the pleasure of interviewing Ryan Szczesnicki, who is the star of AMI TV's We Were Broncos. And this exact conversation came up about the no classification system. And I was going to save this no classification system for when we run that interview with Ryan in a couple of weeks. I don't exactly know where I'm going to put it, but we're going to run it in a couple of weeks. But the question becomes, Russ in the first episode, Russ Harrington of We Were Broncos, suggested that para ice hockey is one of those unique sports that doesn't have a classification system, and thus they can lean towards the amputees, and thus this is why Ryan wasn't able to crack the roster because he has paralysis lower body and can't do the same things that somebody with an amputee can, as Cameron aptly pointed out. So the question preemptly to the Ryan interview is, because of all this, should there be a classification system in para ice hockey? Because there's a demographic that is totally unable to crack, because we're looking at, well, we're going to go with people that are double amputees or single amputees, whatever they go with. Should there be a classification system, or are we happy with just simply the world wants para ice hockey, they want it fast, and so in order to do that, we have to have amputees play the sport, and that's that, Cameron. What are your thoughts?
Well, you could do a system where maybe only so many amputees are allowed on the ice at once, and then all the other players, they get on the ice to be able to play. And I still think you'd see it fast and quick because, and I really don't know how many players are amputees on the Canadian team, to be quite honest with you. So maybe somebody in our listening audience will do some crack research and say, hey, Cam, did you realize that Canada has more amputees than Team USA? And hey, if that's the case, so be it. But I just don't think there is. But yeah, maybe if you're only allowed so many amputees on the ice at once, then, all the other players that you have, put them on. So maybe that's one way to, make it a little bit more equal. What do you think, Claire?
Yeah, I don't really agree that when we're talking about single leg amputees, I don't think that they really fit into this specific conversation. In my mind, like when I think about like the advantages that we're talking about, it's really only regarding the double amputees that really get that gap of advantage. And
cough.
I can tell you about like the classification system that para hockey has right now. Just like anything else, it could probably use an update or some new fresh thinking around. Again, I'm going to speak selfishly because it has kind of cut out teammates of mine that are now ineligible because they aren't classifiable, quote unquote. So I think it's a little bit of a gray area right now in terms of classification within para hockey. But in terms of how many like amputees that can be on a team or on the ice, I don't know. I think that's just really, if that's coming from like an athlete saying that or a coach saying that, like I would kind of reply with, well, that's just an excuse. Like get better at hockey, figure it out, because teams have figured it out. And if you look at the top 6 teams in the world right now, if you like this tournament that just happened, and last year's World Championships, they're closing in. There's a good 4 to 6 teams, top teams that I know at last year's World Championships, the games were 1 goal apart. So I know the Americans are kind of the team to beat, and they have, yes, the most double amputees and all this. But people are trying to figure out how to beat them and how to create systems that work for them to win. But yeah, just to finish off my thought, I'm really curious to see who we see retire after Italy, especially on the U.S. team.
For wheelchair basketball, they have a point system of players on the court. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that the hockey players, and I'm not sure what their system is as far as, their point system or who they're allowed on the ice. I just thought anyone was allowed on the ice.
You're right.
And is that the same with the women's para?
Yeah, so it's really difficult. So wheelchair basketball, yes, there is a point system. You can only have, I think, 14 points on the court at all times. Yeah. But you sub in and sub out those people. Like there's a timeout and there's a break in play.
Because you can only have so many points on the. You can only have so many points on the court.
So you're not stopping.
You can only have so many points on. So I guess the point I was making is that you said something to the effect of, well, for para ice hockey players, they just have to figure it out. So why in basketball? Why don't they just have the best players out there? And if they're not, able to compete at that level, just have the best para and no point system. If you're going to say it for one way for hockey, why can't it be the same way for wheelchair basketball? And I know that's the way they've done it, but doesn't mean that it can't change.
Right. But it comes down to the actual in-game play. You would have to take a lot more timeouts during a hockey game to make sure you have the right amount of points on the ice, where that wouldn't allow for a free flowing like line change and stuff like that. There'd be a lot of breakage in play, whereas wheelchair basketball, the game itself already has, you get 5 more timeouts per period than you do in hockey. There's just a lot more breaks in the play, so it allows for substitutions.
Yeah. And I don't really see it as substitutions myself. It's just, my point is why don't you just put out the best players in one sport and put in the best players in another sport out there too?
Especially because hockey is literally one of the only sports that doesn't have some kind of classification system. I mean, obviously you have to have a disability. There's no doubt about that. But hockey is the one sort of standalone, situation that says we don't have a classification other than to say that you have a disability. So that just opens the door, but it does close the door to people that come in and say, well, I have lower paralysis of my limbs, and well, that immediately takes you out, and then everybody goes, well, you would be successful in wheelchair basketball because of the situation. If we're gonna go towards a classification system, I kind of like the idea of, if you're gonna say, you can only have one amputee on the ice at one time, but then that totally segregates the amputees as well, in the sense that there's no other disability you can do the same thing. So there's not really a win to the conversation, but I do see Cameron's point. If we're having the best players on the ice for hockey, then we need to possibly do that for the other sports, but then that changes a whole lot of other things that go on, and so this conversation could go on for days and days and days. And we've had conversations about classification in the past. Classification in general is a fickle thing for all para sports, because a lot of it is subjective to what somebody can and cannot do, and it's a conversation that will continue for a long time. But I also, Claire, take your point when you say, well, right now hockey is the way that it is, and so you just got to learn to be better and learn how to defend the Declan Farmers of the world, because you also cannot take away the skill of Declan Farmer beyond the fact that he's a double leg amputee, because he has a ton of skill on him as well. Any other comments?
No, I absolutely agree that this is an ongoing conversation, and it spans over multiple para sports, and that's the unique thing about para sports, right? There's just this other level of, okay, how do we navigate all these disabilities and range of motion and all this? And like, I wouldn't classify to play wheelchair rugby. Would I love to play wheelchair rugby at a national level? Hell yeah, I would, but I can't, because my disability doesn't warrant that. So it's such an interesting topic, and how we can, I guess, just not completely change something, but like you said, Cam, like change a little detail here and there, even if it's trial and error, to try to navigate classification better. I'm always all ears for suggestions, and to see how any game can change, really.
Yeah, and that's interesting. We'll have to talk about that another time. For what I like to call murder ball, I didn't realize that you wouldn't be able to qualify to play for a team, and I guess I wouldn't, and that's just wrong. But the only other thing I would like to say, about the World Para Ice Hockey Championships, is that I believe Tyler McGregor, he ended up being the forward MVP, or I'm not sure what they called it or classified it as, but I found that interesting because Dominic Cozzolino, he actually got a couple more points than Tyler. So I wonder, it was just a thought in my head as to why Tyler got it and maybe not Dominic. So maybe that's another chat for another time too, but it was interesting because he got 2 more points, Dominic.
Subjective reasoning. I guess they didn't solely go by points. But I share your same kind of sentiment. And honestly, just to sort of put a close on this conversation, I mean, to both of your points, and I think, Claire, you kind of said it in the sense that you couldn't play certain sports. Well, there's able-bodied people that as much as they'd like to play whatever sport, maybe they're just not gifted to play that sport. So it's not just limited to, para sports. It's all sports, in that sometimes people just don't have the same talent to play on a given sport, even though they would love to. I mean, I would have loved to have a great career in para ice hockey, but that just wasn't in the cards. And bocce was, and it's just the reality of you gotta fit with what's in your disability and when and how that's going to work. But yeah, fascinating conversation with Ryan coming up in the next few weeks, and stay tuned for that. And we'll publicize the We Were Broncos, as it's a 6-part documentary. So I'm probably going to put it in next week's show, to be honest, because we're chatting about it right now. So why not? But we'll see when we get there. Let's chat a little bit with the little more than 5 minutes that's left in this podcast, but we can go a little over if we must. Let's talk about Edmonton and Florida. This is the Stanley Cup Final, Part 2. This is a back-to-back same final. Let's pose this question, because we know these are the two best teams. Obviously, these were two teams that didn't have a lot of home ice, if any, in the playoffs, and they are in the finals. What stands out for Edmonton this year that they didn't have last year that maybe gives you an edge and say, well, this is why I'm rooting for Edmonton, beyond just that they're the Canadian team? Cameron, what gives Edmonton the edge that they didn't have last year, in your opinion?
Well, you took my first answer away. It's because they were the Canadian team. So I guess I'm going to have to come up with another answer. I think the goaltending's been much better these playoffs. Skinner, after a rough start in the first round, I believe it was, he seems to be just kind of moving along. So I think goaltending has been great for them, but he's going to be going off now against a great goaltender, the Russian goaltender. It's, probably advantage to Florida there. The forwards, I think McDavid and Draisaitl, they've been phenomenal this playoffs. So I think they're going to be a big factor in the series. And I don't know, I guess the only part that kind of worries me about the Oilers, and it's been pretty good, is the defense. But that's kind of always what worries me about Edmonton, is their defense. So, I guess we'll see what happens. And hopefully Edmonton can come out on top this year. It's just going to be really hard against Florida, because they play a certain way, and it's tried, tested, and true to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So let's hope they get a better result this year.
I think the main thing that they have this year that they didn't have last year is an overall experience being in the finals. They know what it feels like. They know, especially against the same team too. They're playing the exact same team, a couple more additions on each side. They know what to expect. I think that's the biggest thing for Edmonton. But I think their biggest gap now that they have to replicate is Zach Hyman. He led the league in hits in the playoffs. And they're going to have that replaced somehow, somewhere, by someone, because we know how Florida plays. They're going to bring it and try to be that more physical team. And we can't, Edmonton can't let them push them around in that area. I think that, in my opinion, that's the biggest difference from last year is finals experience. And it'll be interesting to see how they fill that gap of physicality, because it's going to be there and it has to be there.
So I took Cameron's idea away by saying that you can't say it's only because they're a Canadian team. And Claire took my one thought away when I was going to say experience and maturity. But the other thing that I'll say is that I really believe, beyond everything you guys have said, because I agree, but I really believe that the advantage begins with home ice advantage. The fact that you have 4 games out of 7 possible in Edmonton this year is a massive difference. And I think that that's going to be the thing, because if Edmonton can come out, and I'd love to see Edmonton get the first 2, but this is the Stanley Cup Final, and welcome to Florida. They've been there, done that, won the Stanley Cup last year. But if you can set yourself up in 2 positions, either winning in 5, which I don't think is likely going to happen, or knowing that you have that 7th game in your home ice, that's going to be a big difference. Last year, the 7th game was in Florida, and you saw what happened there. This year, the 7th game is in Edmonton, and I really believe that's going to be an advantage to this. Who do you guys think is going to win, and in how many games? Claire, go.
Oilers in 7.
Florida in 6.
Oilers in 7, and they're going to win it on home ice. Cameron, why did you complain that I took your idea away about them being the Canadian team, and then you picked Florida as the team that's going to win? Can you please explain yourself? Because it makes no sense.
You said that we can't. You said that we can't say that they're the only Canadian team left, or the Canadian team left. So we can't use that as a reason to pick them or why they're going to do well. And you didn't say that they were going to win at that point in time of the conversation. You had just said you can't use that as a reason as to why they're going to do well.
Fair.
You asked why Florida or why Edmonton's going to do well. So I gave you some, but I think Florida Panthers are going to win.
By the way, I could watch Paul Maurice's press conferences for like an entire summer, and I would be totally fine with it. I just love his just crass humor, and I just love Paul Maurice. I wish it worked out in Toronto when he was the coach many moons ago, but it didn't, because he's not here anymore. But I do like me some Paul Maurice. I would like to see Sam Bennett get eliminated from this series somehow. Not that I want to see him injured significantly, but the way that he injured our goaltender in Toronto, I'd like to see Sam Bennett get a little taste of his own medicine. Cameron, you're a Leaf fan. Before I wrap this up, I want thoughts from both of you. Does this give Leaf Nation any solace to know that 2 years in a row they lost to the Stanley Cup champion one year, and now the Stanley Cup finalist another year, and going again? Do you have any solace because now Florida is in the Stanley Cup final that Toronto lost?
4 out of the past 5 times they got eliminated, the Leafs, was eventually to the Stanley Cup champions.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to leave that there and let it marinate. And the Leafs took Florida to 7 games, although they blew the whatever on that. So, but they took them to 7 games, and nobody else has. Florida first round, 5 games. They played the Leafs second round. They beat them in 7. And then against the Carolina Hurricanes, Florida, they beat them in 5 games too, I think.
Yeah.
So, 4 of the last 5 times the Leafs have played against Stanley Cup champions. So I think they're this close, but the DNA is going to change, as they have been saying in the media all week. So we'll see.
Claire, you haven't had a lot of chance to chat about the Leafs screwing up against the Florida Panthers because you've taken care of some personal stuff. So I'm going to give you about, as long as you need to tell me what your thoughts are about the Toronto Maple Leaf. But understand that we are out of our time. But do go. Tell me your thoughts.
I mean, I don't think anyone's surprised that we have gone over time. That's kind of we are very consistent with. But
Yep.
I think it's consistency rolling over from the regular season to the playoffs. We have a handful of Maple Leafs that maybe not decide. I'm sure they're not making this decision intentionally of like not showing up on the scoreboard in the playoffs, but don't put up 50, 60 goals in a season and 3 in the playoffs. Like that's driving me nuts. Score some goals in the playoffs.
And then you have the balls, and I'm gonna use some language, so we'll see if it stays in the podcast or it doesn't. Then you have Mitch Marner, as ballsy as he was in Game 7, look at his bench and tell them to wake the fuck up. And I wanted to say to Mitch Marner, who are you? You should be the one waking up. Like, who are you to say that you need your bench to wake up? Why don't you wake up and score some points? Like, seriously, I don't get it. But we've gotten rid of Brendan Shanahan, so that's going to solve all the world's problems. And we got rid of the president of the organization. I'm being totally sarcastic.
You're going to drive me to drink.
That's okay. I'll probably drink with you. Anyways, have a great week, everybody. We'll be back next week. Until then, be safe, be well.